How is everyone? Hello, Raquel on Facebook. We have a few announcements before we get started. Our Adventure Club trip to Butterfly World is this Saturday, and so I took a ride out there, um, and it's a very nice place. You know, like there's a whole equestrian thing going on there. It was a Trade Winds Park or something. But when you're coming, who's planning on coming? Coming. Okay. When you come, it's a Sample Road, right? When you're coming west on Sample Road, you make a left to go to Butterfly World. I made a right, and I went all the way around trying to find Butterfly World. But I think it's going to be very peaceful. And Dawn was talking about maybe doing a picnic or trying to do something. Was apparently Butterfly World is about a 2-hour experience. Okay, so I'll be texting you tomorrow to find out who is coming. You can RSVP. Everyone is welcome, and we'll figure out the time. Is there a time that people prefer? 10 in the morning you want to meet there? 11 in the morning? 12? Well, it'll be hot. It's outside too, you know. Yeah. I'm thinking maybe 11. Huh? Kind of compromise. Yeah, yeah. 11:20. Mm. Hey, Jamie is joining us from Puerto Rico. What's up, Jamie? He is doing some business and playing some golf down there. So, um, is there anything that anybody wants to do on Saturday in addition to Butterfly World? There's also like some like frisbee golf thing there or something like that. Uh, no, you can't rent or anything there. So, all right. Well, we'll work that out. I'll be in touch. I don't want to work that out now. Our full moon satsang is on at Oceanfront Park is on Monday the 24th, and that's always really well when the weather cooperates is really beautiful. To meditate on the beach, and we get quite a crowd there. Sometimes we get between like 50 and 100 people. So, when the weather is right, it's really a very very nice evening. And for those of you who are new here, that's where I give like the core teaching about where we start, what is meditation right from the beginning of the conversation. So I do that once a month on the full moon because here you're jumping into an ongoing conversation that's been going on for years, literally. So, but you can jump in uh, anywhere you'd like. Hello, Antoinette. How are you? So we have lots of people that tune in on Facebook, and the word is really getting out, and it's really helping people. In fact, the satsang that we have tonight was a question from someone in Pakistan, which I thought was very interesting. So yeah, it's a different world that we live in. One last thing. The next 3 Wednesdays, the Duncan Center is not available to us. Occasionally, someone comes and rents out the whole Duncan Center in its entirety, so this room is not available to us. And it's unusual that there would be 3 weeks in a row. So what we're going to do is we're going to have movie night next week at my house. So I have a nice pool, and well, I live in a condo that has a nice pool, one that I don't have to take care of, fortunately. And we have a nice movie room. Sometimes we come, have some food, hang out by the pool, watch a movie, and kind of have just a nice, relaxing evening together. Spend some time as a community. So that will be fun. And then there is a 5th Wednesday in October, and it's the 31st. It's Halloween. Does anybody want to, like, because we can't be here on the 3rd and the 10th, does anybody want to just skip the 3rd entire? Because when we have a 5th Wednesday, we always take that off so I can rest my brain. So instead of doing it at the end of the month, the 31st is available. Do you want to have satsang on the 31st or no? A Halloween party satsang. We'll all dress up like monks, you know. Okay. So I will continue. I will let you know about the beginning of October. It will probably be on the beach, you know, because we don't want to lose our rhythm, you know. And if the weather cooperates, the beach is very nice. That's the only problem with the beach is that when the weather is bad, it just it's not fun. But when the weather is beautiful, you want to be there every time having satsang there, you know. Um, I think that's all I got for you as far as announcements. Um, so I'm looking forward to Saturday, and I think it's going to be fun. It's always fun when we get together. Are you coming Saturday, Rosanna? Okay. All right. Um, all right. Are there any questions about any of that, Stephen? Oh, well, we start at 7 p.m. It's at Oceanfront Park in Boynton Beach. Do you know where that is? Yeah, it's in Ocean. I think they changed it to Ocean Ridge, like on the maps. Um, Sometimes if you Google Oceanfront Park, it takes you somewhere in the middle of Boynton Beach, which of course is not on the ocean. Yeah, Ocean Ridge. Yeah, yeah. I mean, or you can even come even earlier if you want because you know, the parking is free after 4, and you can just come and hang out and just chill out until we start. If it's a nice afternoon, it will be very relaxing. Bring a beach chair. If you have a beach chair, maybe some bug spray. The bugs have not been an issue in a long time. Now that I just said that, we'll all be getting bit on Monday, but and it's whatever you need to be comfortable. I want you to be comfortable on the beach, okay? Because we're there for a good hour and 45 minutes where I give I mean, I built a whole PA system that's portable that I bring down. I talk out of this microphone and, so it's serious satsang there on the beach. Um, and it's the north end. So when you come into Oceanfront Park, are you familiar with Oceanfront Park? You go up that hill, right? And you make a right. Park as soon as you can there. There's a set of stairs right there, and you look to the left. That's where we are. There used to be a volleyball court, and I think the storms took it out. So, but we're usually just north of where that volleyball court used to be. You can still see the posts, and we're fairly obvious. So, okay. Anything else? Oh, right on. Um, Sunday, what time? Tom is our resident author, and he has written a book and is having a book signing and sort of kickoff at 3 o'clock. Should I have it here? Oh, I have it in my briefcase. Just push the button, hold it a beat, and it will come on.
Yeah, it's at 3 o'clock on Sunday over at High Point 6 Clubhouse. The same place we've been at. Live music, and we just always have fun when we do them.
Right.
There will be cake.
There will be cake.
There will be cake. So that's good. Yeah, and we're just going to have some fun, and everybody gets a book. It's $10, and every time I've done it, I've enjoyed it. So
Cool.
Hopefully everybody else will too.
Very cool. Very cool. So again, 3 to
3 to like 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's Sunday afternoon. We don't have to. There's
Right.
not that much to say.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right. We're looking forward to it. I think that's it. Shall we meditate? All right. So we're going to meditate for about 5 minutes just to get ourselves here, okay? Let go of the day and just bring yourself to this moment. I will guide you through it. So sit comfortably and close your eyes. And as you hear the sound of the bell, notice the way that it grabs your attention and brings your attention to this moment. And then just stay in this moment as the bell fades. we'll begin by taking 3 deep, relaxing breaths together. First deep breath in and exhale. Second breath in and exhale. Third breath in and exhale. Now continue breathing deeply but gently into your abdomen. And I encourage you to breathe more and more slowly until you're breathing as slowly as possible without it being at all uncomfortable. With each exhale, let your body relax. If you notice any areas of tightness or tension, consciously allow that tension to fall away. Become aware of the room that you're in. Notice the sounds, the smells, the tastes, the sensations on your skin. Feel the energy of the people around you. Just relax and be here and be nowhere else. Welcome, welcome to Satsang. Good to see you. Hello, Jeff. Hello, Melissa. We've been talking more and more about returning to the self. Not even returning. Realizing the self. What was Satsang last week? It was, what was the title of it? Do you remember? Right, right. Yeah. I can't remember the name of it, but I have a good memory, just really short. I had to take more of those nootropics, right? But, you know,
It might have been realization of self.
maybe. Yeah, and regardless, how has that been affecting you? You know, are you starting to um, are you starting to get a little space between what's happening in your mind and your mind? I mean, and the self. Very, 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 very important. We're going to talk about that a little more. It's kind of it's going to be woven into this teaching. But all the trouble is in your mind. And when you believe yourself to be the mind, the thoughts in the mind, then whatever comes up, I grab you by the throat and throw you around like an 800-pound gorilla. What we're going to talk about tonight, how to get relief from stress. Why don't we just get into it? Sherry, would you do me the honors? Thank you. There are extras if anybody wants an extra. Here, for you. All right, I'm going to bring the... just going to make sure I get the right ones here. Okay. All right. For those of you who are on Facebook, this did come up at 6:45 for you. And this is posted so you can read along with us, okay? Rosanna, you... All right.
A question came in from a friend of the Peaceful Minds Center in Pakistan. He wrote, Hello, sir. I have a problem. Please hear me kindly. Tell me how to get released from stress. It's unfortunately that so many people in modern society deal with stress on nearly a daily basis. Stress has become an unquestionable part of life for many people. It's almost being normalized. It's not normal, it's not healthy, and it's not necessary. Fortunately, stress is not something put onto us. It's something we create for ourselves. And as so, we can start creating.
Stress is something that's extraordinarily common, true? And you always hear about stress this, stress that, you know, and people are dealing with stress. Stress has become so ingrained into us that we almost feel weird without it. It's such a strange part of our mind. It's such a strange part of our life that it feels kind of normal when it's there.
It's almost like a badge of honor.
Mike?
It's almost like we brag about it. We treat it like a badge of honor. Well, I'm under a lot of stress.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's a great point.
That shows me that shows everybody that I'm important because I have a lot of stress.
Right, right. I'm doing something right in life because I'm working so hard that I'm losing my mind, right? You know, it's such foolishness. And it really is, it happens on a daily basis. You know, my life I have created much differently than most people's lives, you know. My life from 7 to 10 a.m. is my practice, you know? And so that's when I exercise, eat right, meditate, take care of all the things that I need to do to get my mind the way that I want it for the rest of the day, all the Zenless stuff, right? And I can tell you that I very, very much enjoy that. I enjoy living that way. I created my life that way purposely. There were sacrifices I had to make to have a life like that. But very, very few people, I don't know anybody that does that. I understand that my mind is the most important thing, that my entire experience of reality happens in my mind. When I'm suffering in my mind. When I'm happy in my mind. If my mind is in a good state, my world is a wonderful place. If my mind is in a bad state, my world stinks. And so my practice is front and center, and my life is orchestrated around my practice, period. And if my life starts encroaching on my practice, then something has to change in my life. Why? Because I understand that my mind is everything. But when I talk to most people, like you call somebody on the phone, just anybody, just call somebody who works, you know what I mean, or has kids. And you hear it in their voice. Oh, okay, how you doing? Oh, okay, I'm, and I got to go here and I got to go there, and I'm running around, and their life is so chaotic. And it doesn't have balance. And they're never really where they are. They're always on the next thing, which is the opposite of our practice. And this is just normal until you go walk in the woods. Then you see what normal is. Because human beings are the only ones running around chasing nothing. The rest of nature is just sitting there breathing. There's a saying, a Buddhist saying, I think, that said, nature never hurries, but everything always gets done. So I like to spend a lot of time, in the woods and in nature, because when I'm in the human part of the world, I get all cranked up. But when I'm in the nature part of the world, my natural clock my natural heartbeat starts beating with the rhythm of nature, and I just calm down, and everything is fine. And it's really beautiful. So the first thing that we want to establish is that stress is not necessary, stress is not normal, stress is not healthy. And it's something that we really create for ourselves. So let's get any questions? You can stop me at any time, okay? If you have any comment, questions, feel free. Sherry, would you read the next one?
Stress is an internal reaction to external stimuli. In life, there is a karmic unfolding that we have very little control over. Each moment stands on the shoulders of all moments before it, and those moments are interrelated. So, why things happen can be difficult to discern. The why is not important, as it does not change what's happening. What's important is that things happen. Many times, things we don't want to happen, happen. We don't control that. What we do control, whether we realize it or not, are our internal reactions to what happens.
There is this karmic unfolding in life that you hear me talking about all the time, that this moment stands on the shoulders of all the moments before it. And not only that, everything is so interrelated. That it's like you're not the center of the universe, you're part of the universe. That's going to be disappointing to many people. And so whatever affects you affects everybody else, affects everything else. I mean, karma is so difficult to see that even it would take the most enlightened beings to see the effects of karma. But you have to first understand that basically you don't get a vote. It is what it is. I say that to myself a lot. You know, when I'm just by myself and things are happening, I'm like, okay, it is what it is. And when you realize that life is just, you know, this karmic unfolding is something that I understand very clearly in my mind, but I'm not sure if that term makes sense to you. Karma, in the most basic sense, is sort of a cause and effect. You know, that there is causality, that, you know, that if I want to be in shape and I'm sitting on the couch every night eating ice cream and not exercising, you know, am I going to be in shape? Of course not, right? So, karmically, you know what I mean? That's like karma, this sort of cause and effect, that everything is affecting everything. You know, that, and it's sort of this sort of wave of just unfolding, you know, just an unfolding around you. The cause and effect, 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 and it's just unfolding. Like, so life is just happening around you. And so you have to realize, like, if you look clearly at your life, remember, don't believe anything that I say. Hold what I say up to what you are experiencing in life and just see if it helps make sense. And if it conflicts with you, throw it in the garbage. It's okay. Take what you want. But if you look at your life, can you see plainly that that it's just kind of what happens every day is just kind of happening on its own? Stay with this. There's so much that you don't control. And if you really take a look at what you control and what you don't control, you might get a little depressed at first. When I first started looking, I remember hey, Diego Davis. What's up, Diego? Sorry, I like to check into the Facebook crowd, so you'll get used to it. When I heard the Serenity Prayer for the first time, have you heard the Serenity Prayer, right? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I saw that. I was in my early 20s, and I'm like, wow, these are some really wise words. This is really interesting. And I started thinking about, well, what do I control? All right, I don't control how my parents treat me. I don't control what happened in the past, you know, in my childhood. I don't control who wants to date me and who doesn't. I don't control. And it went on and on and on and on and on. And I was like, oh my God. I don't control anything in my life. And I was so depressed. I'm like, I can't believe I don't control anything. And I was upset about it. And I was like, God, I have no control of anything. And then it hit me. Pow. None of that is my problem. I don't control any of it. It is not my problem. How people react to me, what people say to me, what people do in life, how things affect me, all these things that I don't control, I have no interest in. What a waste of time trying to control things that you don't control. And when you look, I mean, I really hope that you do this. That you really sit home and start to think, what do I control? It's like this much. But it takes all the responsibility off of you. Takes all the stress from you. Because you're not worrying about things you don't control anymore. And it really helps your practice, because you're like, look, these are the things that I control. And then whatever happens, happens. And I've just got to be ready for what happens. And I get that I'm not driving the bus in my life. What I have done through my practice is really trained and rewired my mind so that the uncertainty of knowing that I don't control anything and I don't know what's going to happen next, I can deal with very easily. And although I have no idea what's going to happen next, I know that whatever happens, my mind is not going to come off the rails. So it doesn't matter what happens to me, because I'm not going to go into some internal somersaults about it. Because that's really the fear, you know, is that you're going to feel so terrible. You're going to feel so much stress and anxiety and whatever you want to call it, all of these uncomfortable feelings that you don't want to feel. That's really the fear. We don't want to be in that discomfort. Well, the joke is that life is just happening and you are creating this discomfort for you in the face of what's happening that you don't control. Sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud, doesn't it? You with me? You looking back on your life and seeing agreement with what I'm saying, right? Yeah. All we really want is to feel good. That's why we want things. Because we think they'll make us feel good. But what happens when you want something is that you pine for it and you're uncomfortable because you don't have it, and then you get it. And you go, oh, this feels so good. I got what I wanted. But what happens in the moment that you got what you wanted was that you experienced the absence of wanting, and that's what felt good. There's no joy in any object or situation. There's no joy in the stick. But if you want the stick, you will be very upset. And when you get the stick, for a moment, you'll feel good because the wanting is gone. You've never suffered anything that you didn't want. Think about that. You've never suffered anything you didn't want. So you know if you're suffering, you're wanting something. Wanting someone to behave a certain way, wanting something to turn out a certain way, and it creates great, great pain in you. If you didn't want anything, what could harm you? What could trouble you? Absolutely nothing. Let's continue. We're going to talk more about that.
Would you like to?
When you experience stress, where do you experience it? It's in your mind and body. It's inside you. And it being inside you, you can be clear that you must be creating it for yourself. You are doing this unconsciously because there is no way that you consciously create this state for yourself. So, we must bring consciousness to the creation of stress in order to see it clearly.
Right? There's no way that you're going to sit down and say, you know what? I need to feel some stress right now. You know? I'm just feeling a little too calm. Yeah. You know? A little too peaceful.
Let's mix it up.
Yeah, you know? I've had 5 days of feeling great, and I'm ready with George Carlin, right? I'm ready for a crappy day. It's this happens without us being conscious to it happening. So we have to be aware that, okay, the mind is creating a state that I don't want to experience. And it's only happening inside me. If I'm sitting next to you and you're all stressed out, I can't catch it from you. You know what I mean? I can't experience it. It's yours. And so it being inside you, you know very clearly is not coming from the outside in. Although your mind will make it seem that way. I'm upset and it's your fault. No. Some stuff happened, and this is what happened inside you in the face of that stimuli, whatever it was. You know, no one can hurt you. No one can hurt you. Why would I say that? Mike, we have the mic?
Because it's all in our minds.
Yeah, because no one can, like, I had it a moment ago. Give me a moment. No one can hurt you. No one can hand you hurt and say, here, take this. They can't force hurt upon you. They can't force hurt into you. They can do some stuff, and then your reaction is, I'm hurt. And that is really a judgment of their actions, that you suffer. Does that make sense? It's very important that you see this. Because somebody does something, and then your choice, unconsciously, is to be hurt about it. And then who suffers? You. Now, typically, where that comes from is a negative core belief system. Because if you felt good about yourself, if you didn't have a negative core belief system, and every mentoring student that I ever worked with and everybody I know, somewhere in there has a negative core belief system. Some are very profound, some are more subtle. But we really, most of us think so poorly of ourselves. And we're just so insecure. And you would never know it at looking at a person. You would never think. But when you're a good listener like me, and you sit down and you talk with them, they tell you. And people get so down on themselves. You know, the mind gets so down on them. So what happens is someone does some stuff, and what's really happening is that it's triggering your own core beliefs about yourself. And the ego grabs it and it goes, see, I told you you're no good. Nobody wants you. You're not attractive. You're not intelligent. I told you, see what that person did? It's proof you're no good. And this is what goes on in your own mind. Ask me how I know that. And this is how we create suffering for ourselves. This is how we create stress for ourselves. This is why we get so attached. Oh my God, if this person doesn't behave a certain way, you know, it's very stressful, you know, because our whole being is involved in it. Our whole sense of self is involved in it. Our self-esteem is involved in it. Our wanting is involved in it. I want to get what I want. It's all foolishness. That only creates the causes and conditions for suffering. Would you like to read? All right. Tell me your name again. Susan, right? Suzanne.
Mhm.
Okay.
As we consciously investigate the way our minds create stress for us, the first thing we will notice is fear. You must realize that your mind has developed and evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. You have primal instincts and old wiring that was once necessary for survival that you really don't need in modern society. This wiring can get triggered and activate fear where there's really nothing with which to be afraid. A fearful internal state is a very stressful internal state. If you look back on your life and compare the times you were feeling fear versus the time you were not, the effects of fear are quite evident and highly undesirable.
So first of all, I always like to point out that when we think about evolution, we think about evolution that something happened and we have evolved. But we're still evolving. You know, evolution never stopped. And the next step in the evolution of humanity is evolving beyond identification with mind. Identification with mind is directly responsible for all of the wars, all of the conflict, all of the killing, all of the disharmony. What you're seeing is a reflection of the state of the human mind in reality. What's going on outside us is what's going on inside us being expressed outwardly. And if you look at your own mind, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Because there's been wars and conflicts going on inside me for a year, you know. I've been trying to get this inner stuff to sign a truce for a long time. So we're still evolving. We still have old wiring, you know. I mean, 100,000 years ago, it was very dangerous. It was, there was lots to fear. You were always in fear of your life. It was all about survival, survival, survival. Well, we still have a lot of those pathways in us that get triggered. You see? So you have to be aware that this mind-body that you're trying to navigate, that you're trying to work with as you move through life, has got a lot of inherent pitfalls, that don't have anything to do with you or don't have anything to do with even what's going on half the time. Just these weird, visceral, wired-in ancient reactions. Okay? Now, why do I say that? Because I want you to understand that it's not easy to navigate that sometimes. It's not easy to steer that sometimes. Sometimes just things come running out of you. You ever experience anger and rage, and you're raging on somebody, and you're like, what is that? And what did they do? Never. Whew. Yeah. It's terrible to even think about, isn't it? It's an eruption. Yes. And that's some really primal, primitive stuff. Like when you see kids, like, you'll see like a video or something of kids in like maybe high school, and they're having a fight, and you watch like the energy ripple through everybody around the fight, and everybody, I mean, like, being human is not an easy thing to navigate, And there are lots of things that affect us that we're not even aware of. So, if we're going to talk about stress, we have to talk about fear. We have to talk about fear. Because so much of stress is fear. Do you realize that? Sometimes fear can be very subtle. But when fear comes, you're in a different state. You're in a hypervigilant state. And you start to feel stress, which is useful in a fight or flight situation for 10 minutes. But we're feeling stress for 10 months. And the body should not be under stress for that much time. Is not healthy. I think that the number one health factor for people is stress. I think that's why there are people that can drink scotch and smoke cigars their whole life and live till they're like 105, because they're not stressed. And I'm not saying that the scotch and all that is what's not making them. I think they're not stressed people to begin with, and so their body doesn't degrade like that, because stress really degrades the body, you know. So then comes some fear. Fear is such an uncomfortable feeling, isn't it? It's so terrible to be afraid. I hate it when I see people afraid. Ultimately, what are you afraid of? The unfolding of karma naturally? Of people dying, of you dying? Which is like one of the few things that you actually know is going to happen without a doubt, 100%. That's what you're going to be afraid of? Fear, you'll know when some fear come because you'll feel stress. You'll feel weird. Let's continue reading. Tom, you want to go?
Sure. In the distant past, this fear was for your survival. The world was a very dangerous place. The fear that we experience in modern times seems just as scary, although typically it is not life-threatening. That's just our old wiring showing itself again. The discomfort is disproportionate to what's happening, yet we still feel like it's real.
Okay, the discomfort is disproportionate to what's happening, yet it still feels real. Have you experienced this? When you're saying to yourself, what the heck is going on inside me over this little nothing burger? And yet inside you're doing somersaults, right? And you're thinking to yourself, my God, why can't I just have this experience and not suffer this experience so deeply? It's because of this inherent wiring, this inherent conditioning, this, the way that we're wired. Like, it's just a visceral reaction. Just an automatic thing. And all of a sudden, boom, now you're in this state. And you're like, this is terrible. I don't want to be here. Yet it's happening. So clearly it's not happening consciously. You would never create that consciously. I'll let you just imbibe that for a minute. I shook loose a few brain cells in here right now. Sure, can you grab a mic and ask it?
I find that when I'm with someone, like near them, in proximity to someone who goes into that state, let's say the light switch gets flipped and they're really angry or upset or whatever, it's hard for me to stay calm. It's almost like I'm taking on their characteristics and I start to feel anxious. It's hard to stay calm around someone who's like that. And I'm just wondering if you think that is fear being triggered in us if we're around the person and we start feeling anxious. Oh, sure.
Yeah, that sort of group mentality, that energy link that we have, you've got to be very cognizant of that. Now, again, remember, we're bringing our consciousness to fear, right? So we're seeing that that's happening. In my practice, when someone goes up, I go way down. Whew. I get so quiet and so still, and I just listen. Do you know, when people yell at each other, do you know why they yell at each other? Because you're not listening. So I got to talk louder because you're not hearing me. You understand that? Does that make sense? When someone feels like they're not being heard, they start to talk louder. They start to shout. And that's your clue to say, hey, I'm not listening. if you were listening, they wouldn't do that. And when your voice starts to get louder, you know that you're feeling like you're not being heard, right? There was one time I had the joyful experience of serving on the board of directors where I live, on a condo board, just because I'm a glutton for punishment. Well, you know, there were rewarding things about it. It was very fertile ground to practice, though, you know. And one time I was in a meeting, and I had two buddies that were on the board sitting on either side of me. And there was this one guy who was kind of a big guy, and he was just starting to get upset. You know, I didn't really know about what. And so we're sitting, and there's a table in front of us, and he's starting to get loud. He's sitting like right about where you are, Sean. And all of a sudden, like, he just, the volcano goes off, right? And he stands up and gets his finger, and he starts shouting. And both guys next to me stood up. I grabbed him by the shoulder. I said, just sit down and listen. Just listen to what he has to say. And I looked at him, and I looked him in the eye, and I listened to him. And then I mirrored it back to him. I said, okay, so what you're saying is this, and this. That's right, right? Yes, that's what I'm saying. I said, okay, is there anything else, you know, that you want to add to that? And he looked at me and he said, no. And he turned around and he sat down. And he was quiet the rest of the meeting. That was the end of it. See, if I would have got up there with him and got my chest out, because I'm an Italian guy from New Jersey, and that's how we do. You know, that's how we say hi, you know. And yeah. You know, it would have been a completely different experience. You see, here's another interesting point. When you are getting angry like that, when you are getting upset like that, how do you feel? The opposite of good. Suzanne, what did you say? Anxious, right? Tight. Like you're suffering, right? So how do you think that upset person feels just like you? Suffering. What's the remedy for suffering? What's the medicine for suffering? Compassion. Compassion. Right? So someone is yelling, they're frothing at the mouth, they're screaming at you, everything is your fault. And you just have compassion. Why? Because you're seeing someone suffering being acted out. And you know in that moment, like compassion is seeing another suffering, having a desire to help them end that suffering. You know, in body, speech, or mind. In actions, if there's no actions you can take. In words, if there's no words you can speak. Then in thoughts, just have kind thoughts. Stephen? Yeah.
So if I understand you correctly,
Mm-hmm.
and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you develop a certain mindfulness and attentiveness to the situation with the person, that you don't get caught in the hooks of their anger or their energy and start entering that story, entering that narrative that's going on in their mind and getting caught in the hurricane, the swirl, the tornado, and you're able to stand and be objective and realize and see the reality of what's really going on as they are suffering. They're going through their own little hurricane of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I've been there, done that. I know what it's all about. And
Yeah.
therefore you can generate that compassion and that
Yeah.
loving kindness that spills out towards them rather than getting caught in the hurricane.
Yes. The first thing, like one of the most important things you can do in your practice is be able to recognize suffering. You know, like if you see somebody and they have a broken leg and you're like, oh my God, what happened? And you go running up and you just want to help them and you want to get them to the hospital and you're so compassionate. But somebody has a broken mind and you want to knock them over the head. Because you don't recognize the broken mind as suffering. And there is no place that a human being suffers more than in their own mind. And then your ego starts to get involved, and then you want to win, and then it's not about that. You know, you recognize, you like what a really important skill for a, skilled practitioner is to recognize another's suffering. It completely would change your energy. Because everyone here is compassionate, loving, kind, right? But not in the face of someone coming off the rails at you. Say it again? When it's a well, yes, you see, the interesting thing is, like, this is, what you said was that, with a stranger it's easier, but when it's someone you love, you start getting triggered, right? And the interesting thing is that when someone is having a reaction like that, is that they're not reacting to you. They're reacting to some open wound from their past that you just happen to be the unfortunate person that happened to rub salt in, And it's funny, like when people get upset with me, I acquiesce, like not in a way that I give up my power, you know what I mean? But the whole linchpin to it is that you're recognizing their suffering. And you're saying, when I recognize suffering, part of my practice is to have compassion. But you can't have compassion if you don't recognize suffering first. And people are so suffering. Oh my goodness. It so breaks my heart to see them suffer so much. The simplest things too. That people can get upset about nothing. Nothing. It's all of this conditioned, habitual garbage that we deal with. And so, as we open up the mind and we look at the mind and we look at what it is to be human, we see that there's just so much that is unattended to. So much that we don't know about ourselves. And it creates the stress, and it creates the anxiety. And it creates conflict in relationships, which is going to be the next satsang when we have it. That's going to be a good one. Because the truth is, we only feel best when we're feeling loving, kind, compassionate, and patient, when we're in our true nature. And it's not our true nature because you should or you're going to go to hell if not. Your own body is telling you that. How do you feel when you're being loving and kind? How do you feel when you're being hateful and angry? Nauseating. Nauseating, right? Terrible. Like, when I ask, groups that question, they always come up with the most interesting, adjectives. Like, I just want to throw up. I want to kill myself. I hate it. I'm like, it's just a terrible, terrible feeling. Yet you go diving headlong right into it, into all of your hatred and all of your aggravation. Just out of ignorance. Just out of habit and conditioning. If you had angry parents, likely that you're angry. And likely that you don't even recognize that you're angry because it's been going on so long you don't even know it. Ask me how I know that.
So, what's the difference when, for some of those crazy people who are on a plane wanting to jump off and go skydiving, that fear they feel, they actually want that fear?
Well, that's adrenaline.
That's
it's a chemical
it's
rush.
labeled fear, though, so it's not true fear.
Not fear in the context that we're using here.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? What they're doing is they're using fear, in a life-threatening situation to get a chemical rush, of adrenaline, And so, that kind of fear too. This is very interesting. One in meditation, we're really holding our attention present in the moment, right? And when we are present in the moment is when our nature shines through very clearly, and whatever garbage is floating around in the mind, is gone. Right? You with me on that? When you're jumping out of an airplane, you are present. There is only one place that you are. Like, you are not falling out of the sky going, somebody didn't call me, and it's really upsetting me. You know what I mean? Like, it's and so people get a sense of peace from that too. Sports. When you're watching a football game, you're only watching the football game. And so you get peace from that. But the peace only comes from you being in the present moment. And in meditation, you're practicing holding the attention in the present moment. Make sense? Because the place that you are the least is the place that you are the most. The place that you are the least is the place you are the most. You're always in the present moment, and that's the place you never are. Always on the next thing, always thinking about something, always running naked through the woods of your mind. It creates an interesting visual, right? But you're not here. The time is just an illusion. There's no time. There's no time. Not in the way that you think. Not in the way that there's the past, there's the future, and I'm in the middle, in the present. That's how we've kind of ignorantly triangulated our position in time. Past, future, present. Here I am. But there is no future, and there is no present. I mean, there is no past. How do you experience past? In your mind, in the form of memories, which are in the form of thoughts. So you're right back dwelling on thoughts. Same thing with future. The only way that you can experience past and future is in thoughts in your mind. And so there you are. And when you're there, where are you not? Here. And here's where it's all happening. If you're really suffering, no way you're present. No way. Now, here's the interesting thing. You can consciously facilitate that. As you begin to understand what I'm teaching you, and as you begin to practice, and as you begin to realize, I'm beginning to see the mechanism of the mind, the awareness, the self. I'm beginning to see how it works. We're going to talk about that a little more in this satsang. I can consciously affect the way that I feel. I can consciously let go of my pain. I can let go of my suffering. I can let go of my stress. Because I understand what's causal. And I can stop creating it for myself consciously. Where I was creating it unconsciously, I have brought consciousness to it, realization to it, understand how the mind is creating it for me, and then consciously not do that. Excuse me. Sorry. And the more you practice, and the more you're clear about what you are practicing, the more skilled practitioner you become. Just like hitting golf balls. Hi, my neighbor is here. What's up, Jason? Hope you are well, sir. Let's continue. Who's up, Sean?
Yeah, we're at Our Modern Minds.
Yes, I think so.
Our modern minds are highly creative. The mind creates enormously scary stories about what is happening. And by and large, it is not what happens in life, but our thoughts and stories about what happens that we suffer. The stress comes from the mind and what the mind is imagining. The mind will imagine scary futures that are not actually happening and very unlikely to happen, yet live like they are unreal or real.
Are real. Live like they are real. Our minds are very creative and very inventive. And our minds imagine all sorts of horrible, heinous things. And for some reason, I think lovingly though, I think that our mind is trying to protect us from all possible scenarios. Well, in those all possible scenarios, it seems very easy to go to the worst case scenarios because that's where you're like, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen right now, you know? And for some reason, that's what we want to focus on. It's like, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? So then you start dreaming about all these worst things, and then you're like, oh my God, and then you start like living like it's real. It's not even happening. You're crazy. We're all crazy. We're all a bunch of crazy nut jobs suffering things that aren't happening. And I'm the king of the nut jobs because I get the chair, you know? It's so interesting, but when you throw your humanity out on the table and look at it like this, you start to realize the ridiculousness of what you're doing. And it really messes up your enjoying of your experiencing.
Like an animal swatting at the mirror.
Yeah.
Or a dog chasing its tail.
Like an animal swatting at the mirror, you know, or an actor in a play believing himself to be the character that he's playing. You know, it's really interesting when you see, you know, what you're doing. It's not what happens in life, but our thoughts and stories about what happens that we suffer. I want to stop that. If something is really, really important to you, you are so properly screwed. You will suffer and suffer that. How many times have you made something so big in your mind that you just couldn't have any peace with it? Typically a romantic relationship. Oh, if I just had this romantic relationship, then everything would be great. And, you know, and it puts so much pressure on your relationships. The people you get along the best with are the ones you don't give a crap about. It's just so light and so easy, you know, because you're not attached to how they feel about you and what they think about you, you know? But if this is the one, whoa, man. One of my least favorite terms is soulmate. Do you know why I would say that? Because you put somebody on such a high pedestal that you give them so far to fall they will smash into pieces. You have created something so unattainable. You are my soulmate. Like, you know, like, what happens when it doesn't work out with your soulmate? Oh, yeah, all right, that really wasn't my soulmate. Or I have another soulmate. And everybody's your soulmate. But, you know, it's, you know, it's that, I watch my own mind do this. You know, I watch my own mind just make things bigger and more important than they are. The opposite of that, soul buddy, soul nothing. Leave the soul out of it. Someone that came into your life might stay, might not, okay? You're going to have some good times, you're going to have some bad times, you're going to have some neutral times. And it's always going to be like that, you know? And the importance of any relationship is giving, but we're going to get into that soon. Tom, you got a mic?
And I mean, isn't a lot of that to have to do with thinking that something outside you is what's going to make you happy or sad?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, you put conditions on your happiness.
Yeah. And it's got to, you can't, I mean, what we're talking about is being able to put yourself in whatever mood you want to be in and experience it. But we seem to think it's got to come from outside.
Well, you know what it is that, we see, let me be a little more clear about that. We think that it's the circumstances of our life that give us the way that we feel internally. That is completely false. It doesn't. And you can look back on your life, and your life is complete evidence of what I'm saying. You know? There's a saying that once you get there, you realize there's no there, right? Have you heard that? You're like, if I just had this and this and this, I would be so happy. And then you get there, and you're like, wow, this is really cool. All right, what's next?
Bear always sees another mountain.
Yeah, there's no there. Life is never going to be a way that you go, okay, I got it just the way I want it right now. Now I can be happy for the rest of my life. You can be happy the rest of your life, but not because of the way that life is, because the way of inside is. You see, life is just happening around you. And you can either enjoy your experiencing, whatever it is, or you can suffer your experiencing. And you can suffer your experiencing. But you're going to experience it either way. I don't suffer my experiencing most of the time. And to me, every kick in the teeth is an opportunity. I've always can look back on my life and connect the dots where I can see very clearly that it all made sense. Not when it was happening, Life can really be fun. You know what satsang is about? Having a fun life. That's it. And the reason that you don't have a fun life, if you don't, or parts of it aren't fun, is because of your misunderstandings of your mind. Your mind is creating it as not fun. Your mind is needing it to be a certain way. So you keep creating this stress for yourself. You keep creating this fear for yourself. You keep, oh my God, I'm going to miss it. I want to experience this. I want to experience that. I need more. I need this. I need that. I want. And then you're just in some garbage. And it's never satisfied. The ego is never satisfied. Stephen?
Isn't that because we're chasing happiness, we're chasing satisfaction outside in the circumstances or whatever it is that we're wanting or desiring or being attached to, rather than realizing that we already have it? We just got to tap into it and realize it, right?
We already are it.
Right.
We don't even have it.
Right.
Like, yes, it's that, we think that life needs to be a certain way, and then we'll be happy. So we're playing like bocce with our happiness. We throw the ball out there, and then we go chase it. And then we get there, and we realize there's no there. It's just you in a different set of circumstances, with the same mind and the same aggravation.
It's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
What is?
Chasing after this
Yeah.
that's never there. It's like
Yes.
chasing after a pot of gold at
Yes.
the end of the rainbow.
And it doesn't work. Your own life is proof of that. But where the peace is, where the joy is being present in the moment. And that sounds so weird, so cliche. Like, how could that be? That seems so simple, right? You can have complete bliss cleaning your toilet if you're present to it. Not my toilet, your toilet. But seriously. Yeah. When you are present just in life, completely in the moment, there is great peace. The opposite of that is when you're in your mind and you're imagining these terrible futures, or you're lamenting the past. And you're here in the moment, but you're off in your mind somewhere else. And the mind creates all of these stories and all of these ideas. And one of the craziest things that we do is we create this story of how my life should be. And then when reality doesn't match my story, I get mad at reality instead of dropping my story. Wouldn't it make more sense just to cash in the story and be like, okay, well, this is how my life is. How can I have fun with it? There's so many amazing things about your life that you just take for granted. You have an awesome life. You know when you're going to realize it? When something happens and gets taken away from you. And then you're going to go, oh man, if I could just go back to the way things were, I would be so happy. But when they were that way, you weren't happy. Isn't it just a joy to be human? Just charming, isn't it? We're such expert sufferers. We're so good at it. All right, let's continue. Yeah. I think we're on the back page now, right? All right.
You, you must realize that you have no control over most of what happens. Therefore, it's wise to avoid dwelling on what's happening. You are the observer watching the natural karmic unfolding of life. It is wise to observe the reactions of the mind-body because it is they who are creating this moment as undesirable. They are the source of your stress. Without them, there would be no stress.
So, you know, what's happening is happening. When you sit and observe your internal reactions, and this is a wonderful, wonderful practice, to just watch your own ridiculousness go on inside you, and don't resist it, but be conscious of it. Then you can work with it, okay? You know, then you can look and see, like, okay, this is happening. Don't resist what's happening inside you. You know what I mean? You're human. And, you know, your wiring is very complicated. And there are lots of things that have affected that wiring. So you sit and watch what's happening. And then you can begin to work with it. We're going to talk about that in the next paragraph. So would you pass the mic and we'll...
In order to be free of the source of stress, the thoughts and stories imagined in the mind, you must realize the self. The self is not the mind. The self is that which is aware of the mind. For most, the self has remained identified as the thoughts in the mind since early in life. You must create the separation between the observer and the observed, the self and the thoughts. Once this happens, you, the self, are free to guide the attention away from these mind-created illusions that are generating all this stress and suffering. Without your attention, these thoughts and illusions wither and die. They cannot affect you without your attention and without your interest in them.
Put an asterisk by that one. The most important part of this practice is realizing the self. Because you can know the self, and you can say, oh, I'm not my thoughts. But that's a knowing. That's not a realizing. Because you still really don't believe it. You're like, I get that I'm not these thoughts, but, you know, and then you go thinking and talking about, like, why you're not these thoughts and all this other stuff. And your mind is incessantly conceptualizing yourself. The conceptual you is called the ego. The ego is your story of yourself, your idea of yourself, your mind-made concept of what you are. So if there was a concept of what a tree is, you can see, that a tree is a concept. The bird in the tree doesn't know it's a tree. It's only a tree in your mind. You have made a concept of yourself and believed yourself to be this idea. I've said often in the past, there's no Tom Notarianni. I didn't come here, Tom Notarianni. I came here, and all of a sudden somebody pointed at me and said, "You're Tom Notarianni." I said, "Okay. Where do I live?" "I live on Earth." "Okay. And you're a good boy if you do this, a bad boy if you do that." And this whole idea of who you think you are evolved and has been shifting and changing, and there's nothing stable or reliable about it. And we have been believing ourselves to be this idea, and it just never works. It just leads to problem after problem after problem. You're not the same person you thought you were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It's just the ever-changing flux that concept that you are believing yourself to be is. In meditation, when you go beyond all concepts, you must go beyond the concept of yourself. And then you're going to be in a really trippy place. But a beautiful place. But it will be very strange for you to be without thought and without any need to define yourself. Realizing that the definition of yourself is completely arbitrary. When you sit, though, as the self, what am I pointing to when I say the self? What am I pointing to when I say the self? Observer, I like that. Okay. Do you notice that thoughts come in and out of your mind like a highway, right? The self is the one that is aware that they're showing up. Can you see the difference? The self is the one that goes, there's a thought. The self is not the thought. In the same way that you look outside you and you look at the lamps and you look at the chairs, you are the observer, they are the observed. And you know they're not you. Why? Because you're the observer. If it can be observed, can it be you? No. Are thoughts observed? Throw them out. Are feelings observed? Throw them out. Are energies observed? Throw them out. Is the body observed? Throw it out. What's left? The self, the awareness. Has that awareness ever changed? No way. No way. The awareness, the self, is aware of all the changes. When I look in the mirror and I see some wrinkles and I see some gray hair and I wonder who that is looking back at me. So when you see me and you see a peaceful being and you wonder, how is this being so peaceful? What is different? Is that I am just sitting as the self. And the thoughts that blow through my mind are no more important than the leaves that blow off the trees. And I have very little interest in them. And so they don't touch me. And if something come, like, there's still some stories in my mind, some things I think are really important, I can watch myself suffer that, and I can say, look at how important I've made this thing. I take the importance away, gone. Pain gone. The emotional pain, gone. Like that, gone. Come back to the self. Come back to the self. beyond all of this garbage in your mind. Present in the moment self. Tom?
Since we had that satsang last week, I've been in my car a lot this week, and it's kind of been happening like that. All of a sudden I'm going, what in it? And I go like, wow, that's interesting. And just letting it go. Or like some guy wanted to fight. And I'm like, and I wanted to engage him. Like, not that I wanted to fight him because he probably would have killed me. but then all of a sudden I just went like, wow, what's he doing? Like being me. Not what's that guy doing. What's this human doing?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. And it just kind of lets all the power, all the air out of the balloon.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been not every time.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
more than normal.
Yeah, I mean, and so that you're beginning to get taste of that, you know, and you're beginning to just kind of watch the ridiculousness that arises in you. And you're saying, that's not me. I am the one that is somehow aware of these arisings. And if I engage them by bringing my attention, my interest to them, then I feel the effects. If I have no interest in them, they wither and die.
It's kind of amazing to see when you start looking like that how much there really is that's just a conditioned response.
Yeah.
To not liking like that's not the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to have your paperwork filled out when you get to the front of the line at the post office. Right? And like this whole big deal, and it doesn't matter. It's like you go, oh, look at me, I'm doing it again. Poof.
Yeah. 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 Rinpoche used to say all the time, we are such slaves to our conditioned minds. We are a bundle of conditioned habitual responses. And it's so interesting when you step away from them and you begin to view them and you begin to view the way that you're wired. You're beginning to view the way that you react. It's very easy to see in other people because you can observe and you're watching, and certain people in your life, you know exactly how they're going to react, you know? And every time, like clockwork, you know? When you begin to watch, you know, when you begin to lose identification with the mind-body and you realize that you are not the mind-body, you know, that the mind-body is kind of a tool you use to have this experience. And that you are the one aware of the feedback of the mind-body, right? And all of a sudden you're realizing, hey, whoever wired this thing was a complete jackass. And I want my money back because it's just wired to create aggravation for you over and over and over again. Now, why is that? Because it was not consciously wired. You would never consciously wire yourself that way. Never. But you were born into a world basically blindfolded. They took the blindfold off and they said, here you are. And you didn't know anything about who you were, where you were, what you were. And if you were born to wise people, then you were imparted with wisdom. But I always lovingly and jokingly say that wise people don't have children. You're born into a conscious world. I mean, an unconscious world. You're born into an unconscious world where people are expertly suffering. And you are trained and conditioned by these people to expertly suffer because that's what they know. They're just passing on the only thing that they know. And that's how your mind get wired for all this aggravation. And so it's time for you to reparent yourself. It's time for you to rewire your mind. You know that in meditation, the brain is plastic. You are physically rewiring your mind. physically. I literally don't have the same mind I had in my 20s. Some of the things I suffered in my 20s, I could never suffer today. I laugh about them. But in my 20s, they were so real. Oh my God. Crazy. You know, my codependent side. You know, breaking up with a girl that I didn't even like and being like ripped in half by it. Like, what was that all about? Yeah? It's crazy. But it's just the mind, just what the mind is creating. The human mind is the most complex object in the known universe. It is a manifestation engine. And the problem is that the manifestation engine is not being guided by the consciousness. It's not being guided by anything. So it's manifesting some really wonderful things. And it's manifesting some really terrible things. And it's just manifesting, you know? It's like a magic wand that just nobody's controlling. The mind works for you. You don't work for the mind. The self is aware of the mind, and you've got to peel that apart. You've got to really work to get that separation and realize that you are not the thoughts in your mind. Because here's the problem. For your whole life, as far back as you can remember, there's been like one long thought with no period. And you conceptualize everything. And everything is an idea. And you come here and you sit in satsang and you try to conceptualize what I'm telling you and make an idea out of it. When you're doing that, you're always stuck in your mind. You're always stuck in your mind trying to figure it out. And there can be this insatiable consumption of self-help books and knowledge, and you just want more and more knowledge, and you're going to figure it out. But what's our saying at the Peaceful Mind Center? You figured it out. Once you figure out that there's nothing to figure out, there is only to let go. Let go of all that cannot be you, to be left with that which cannot be let go of. It's odd at first. It's really odd at first. You are so convinced that you are the thoughts in your mind, and you're like, I know what he's saying, but without these thoughts, what am I? I'm not. You're disappearing. But the you that's disappearing is the you that never existed to begin with. The you that's just a story in your mind. A story that's constantly changed your whole life. Very strange. Let's finish up the last one.
The mind can make things that clearly do not exist seem so real. With that power, the mind can create great stress and suffering. However, if you notice, the self is always undisturbed. Even in a fit of anger or rage, there is something inside that is calm. In your practice, you realize the non-conceptual self as what you are. You see clearly you are not the mind, no matter how loudly it shouts. You become comfortable in your natural state, and mind becomes an afterthought. Thus, the stress created by the mind becomes an afterthought too.
Amen. Very good. So the idea is, and then we'll get to our meditation so I don't keep you here all night, that you must practice in order to experience what I am describing to you. Because the words are feeble. The words cannot describe the indescribable. But I have to do my best to give you a conceptual idea of what you're practicing so that you can go practice and have the experience that I'm describing to you. And then you're going to go, oh, that's what he means. And you're like, wow, that was cool. But it's going to be really, really goofy when you separate from identification with mind. Because what it felt like for me was that I was disappearing. And if you think about it, if your whole life is a conceptual idea and all of those disappear, and you think you're a concept, well, all of that disappears. And you're left with, I don't know what I am without my idea of myself. You see? You have to have faith that no harm will come to you in that moment. In that moment when you feel like you're disappearing, I encourage you to disappear. Because the only thing that is disappearing is that which can disappear, is that which was never real to begin with. And then what's left, it's like, it's home. It's like this part of you that never suffered. It's this part of you, it's so beautiful, it's so wonderful. And then there is great peace, and then you just stay there. And then life unfolds around you, and you allow things to be as they are, and you look for the opportunities in things, and you just let things be as though you want nothing, you know? And you know when you're wanting something. How do you know when you're wanting something? You're suffering. You start to feel the pain of wanting. And you drop it like a hot potato because you know exactly what it is. You see, and you come back to the realization that, like, look, what will be will be. What's meant to be, you can't stop. You know, in the karmic unfolding of things, what coming is coming. There's nothing that you have to do. Which is so opposite of what you learned. All right. Does anyone need to use the facilities real quick? Oh, you want to get right into our meditation? Okay. All right. Want to bring the lodge down. Okay. If anybody would like a cushion, you are welcome to come up and meditate on a cushion. But it's just important that you are comfortable, that you are sitting upright in a very alert position. Okay. As you hear the sound of the bell, just let it clear your mind and bring your attention to this present moment. And as the bell fades, stay here. Take a few moments to relax yourself in your own way. And I encourage you that as you're doing that, to breathe more and more slowly until you're breathing as slowly as possible without it being at all uncomfortable. let the tension fall from your body and relax. Breathe slowly. First, become aware of your outer world. Notice what you're hearing, what you're smelling or tasting. Notice the sensations on your skin. And just observe the sensory input from your ears, your skin, your nose, your tongue. And just observe this. Now take that same perspective and turn it inward. And in the same way that you observe what's outside you, observe what's inside you. Start with the body. Notice any discomfort, any tension in the muscles. Notice any energies or emotions flying around. Notice the heart beating. Notice the rib cage rising and falling as you breathe. Now bring the attention to the mind and notice the thoughts in the mind, whatever arise. Notice that there are moments of nothing in the mind, that there are moments of silence. Notice that the thoughts are arising in this vast, vast space of silence. And now realize that you are the one that is aware of it all. That the self is the one that guided the attention from outside you to inside the body to the mind and sat there in boundless equanimity, no judgment of anything, no duality, observing the happenings. And for the rest of the meditation, just sit as the self, observing, and rest the attention in the silence in the mind. And when the attention runs off, chasing a thought, just bring the attention back to silence. Breathe and be empty. love you all very much. And it's always an honor to share this time and space with you. Free hugs at the end of class. And I hope to see you again soon. Facebook, thank you all so much for being here. Very, very grateful that you could join us from as far away as Puerto Rico. And see you when you get back, Jamie. Bye now.